Hey folks, Legion Remix has been out for about 2 months, and I've spent that time thoroughly testing every possible leveling method to figure out which one is the fastest. In this video, I'm going to break down the results from all of the different tests that I've run, so that you can figure out which method of leveling would be the fastest for your preferred playstyle. However, it's important to note that Legion Remix has a lot of different account-wide bonuses that you're expected to increase slowly as you level up multiple characters. Because of this, the optimal strategies look incredibly different from when you're first starting out, compared to leveling alts after all of the bonuses have reached their maximum value. In order to make this guide easier to follow, I've divided it into 3 distinct sections: leveling your very first Remix character, optimal strategies for maximizing your account-wide bonuses, and the fastest way to level up your alts. I've included timestamps in the description below, so feel free to skip ahead if you've already leveled your first character or reached the maximum experience bonus of 400%. For anyone leveling their very first character in Legion Remix, I want to make one thing crystal clear before we continue. It is going to feel very slow. By the end of this video, I'll have demonstrated how you can consistently level from 10 to 80 in 1 hour or less, but many players will hear me say that, spend 10 hours or more leveling their very first character, and then feel incredibly demoralized because either they feel they did something wrong, or that stupid clickbait YouTuber just lied to them. The reality is that Legion Remix is a fantastic option for anyone looking to level a large amount of characters, as the speed will get consistently faster and faster until you've maxed out your account-wide bonuses and reached the sub 1 hour mark. In order to reach that point, you will need to follow the steps in this guide and invest a decent amount of time, so Remix leveling may not be the best option for a brand new player or someone with a limited time to spend on World of Warcraft. Keep in mind that there are some other advantages to playing Remix, like the ability to easily earn a bunch of cool mounts and transmog appearances. If you're new to World of Warcraft, I don't want to scare you away from giving Remix a shot, but I think this disclaimer is important so you're going in with the right expectations. Just for reference, my very first 10 to 80 run in Legion Remix took me 8 hours and 31 minutes, and I played Legion when it was current content in addition to being generally experienced at WoW speed leveling. A few weeks ago, I also did another fresh start run on my European account, and I managed to get a 10 to 80 time of 5 hours and 52 minutes. Despite utilizing some far more optimized routes and shaving off nearly 3 hours, it still took me quite a while to level that initial character. Now, just because you're expected to spend a while on that first character, doesn't mean those extra hours are a complete waste of time. As I've already pointed out, a major goal in Legion Remix is to increase various account-wide bonuses so that you can level much faster in the long run. The 3 major bonuses that matter for leveling are your increased experience gain, infinite knowledge level, and the infinite research unlock progress. Although maximizing these bonuses is a fairly long process, you can still make meaningful progress on all 3 of them as you level up your very first character. Obviously, the most important bonus for leveling is getting a larger increase to your experience gains. You can check your current bonus by hovering over the golden circle buff in the top right of your screen. While leveling your first character, you'll receive a few quests that give you a 1 time per account increase to this bonus. The first one will be obtained at the end of the tutorial questline within Dalaran, which walks you through a lot of the basic Remix mechanics and lets you choose an initial artifact weapon. This weapon will scale with you as you level up, and it only works for one specific specialization for your class. You'll eventually have the opportunity to unlock additional artifact weapons for other specs, but choose your first one wisely, as you'll be stuck in that spec for the rest of the early leveling process. Although this tutorial questline is fairly slow, you are able to skip past it and immediately unlock your artifact weapon on all future characters, so this is just one of the many reasons why your first leveling journey will take a bit longer. As previously mentioned, finishing this tutorial will give you a 10% increase to your experience earned in the form of a perfected epic memento. You'll obtain this item from a few different quests, and using it will permanently increase the XP bonus for your entire account. As the questline progresses, you'll be introduced to the Infinite Bazaar, which is the main hub for Remix. Around this time, you'll receive a quest called Just Between Us by speaking with Momentous. Make sure you pick this up, as it'll be very important whenever you're asked to select a new artifact weapon to pursue. As for when exactly this occurs, it'll vary depending on your class. For instance, Demon Hunters will get this prompt immediately after finishing the tutorial, but monks will first need to complete additional quests to unlock their order hall before being asked to pick a weapon. Whenever this happens, you should always pick the exact same weapon that you received during the tutorial. This may seem counterintuitive, since if you already have that weapon, why would you bother unlocking it a second time? Well, that quest I mentioned earlier, Just Between Us, rewards you with another 10% account-wide experience token in exchange for the duplicate artifact weapon. This means that it's always a good idea to get the duplicate artifact first, as that will make the rest of your leveling 10% faster, and if you want to try a different spec, you can always unlock its associated artifact later on. Keep in mind that both tokens are once per account, so you won't be able to get them a second time when leveling your next character. You'll receive one more of these tokens for free upon reaching level 40, and in order to claim it, you'll need to speak with Moritari at the Infinite Bazaar. The moment you reach this level on your first character, drop everything and return to Dalaran in order to claim this bonus immediately. You'll also receive 2 more of these tokens upon reaching level 80, but obviously this is at the end of your journey, so it'll help your alts, but it won't impact the character you're currently working on. There are a few other sources for these 10% tokens, but I'll discuss this in the following section about how to maximize your account-wide bonuses. Around this time, the game will also inform you about a feature called Heroic World Tier. Enabling this will cause all enemies you fight to be significantly more powerful, but you'll receive 500% increased mob kill experience. While this sounds like an amazing bonus, the reality is that most specs, especially when leveling in Remix for the very first time, will get curb stomped by the average mob in Heroic World Tier. Since this only affects mob kill XP, and not other sources like quests, it'll actually slow down your leveling on average. Personally, I would advise not to turn it on for your initial character, especially if you're fairly new to the game. But if you really want to challenge yourself, there is a small chance that it'll save you time in the long run. Another major aspect of Remix leveling is infinite research quests, which you'll pick up from Eternus, the big dragon in the center of the Infinite Bazaar. Completing these research quests is one of the best things you can do while leveling, as they give a ton of experience and reward you with a token that adds 1% increased experience earned to your account-wide bonus. Unfortunately, while leveling your first character, the amount of research quests that you can complete is extremely limited. As you complete more of these quests, you'll earn progress towards an achievement called Tenured in the Timeways, which has 4 different stages and maxes out at 150 infinite research assignments completed. Obviously, you're not going to get anywhere close to that on your first character, but you should still pick up and complete as many research assignments as possible. The final bonus that you'll want to work towards while leveling your first character is Infinite Knowledge. As you complete quests and kill enemies, you'll notice that everything rewards a currency called Infinite Power. This allows you to unlock additional abilities on your artifact weapon, which lets you kill enemies quicker and, by association, level up faster. Infinite Knowledge is an account-wide bonus that you'll unlock by completing various achievements, and it gives you a stacking increase to the amount of infinite power that your character earns. Generally speaking, it's not that important to pursue this while leveling up your first character, as it only indirectly boosts your leveling speed, and a lot of the best sources for Infinite Knowledge aren't obtainable until you reach max level. The only reason I'm mentioning this here is because there are a few specific sources of Infinite Knowledge that can be worth obtaining while you level up your first character. Specifically, the Lore Runner achievements, which require completing all of the quests in a particular zone, give +1 Infinite Knowledge, and fully clearing a raid on normal difficulty also rewards Infinite Knowledge. As I'll discuss later in the video, both open-world campaign quests and clearing normal raids are a fantastic way to level up even after you've obtained all account-wide bonuses. So, as you can imagine, it's even more efficient to do these things on your very first character. While some activities such as random dungeons can be a decent way to level up your alts in the future, they won't reward you with any infinite knowledge during the initial leveling process, so I would advise ignoring them for now and completing all of those achievements later on after you've reached level 80. While that covers all of the main objectives that you should be keeping in mind as you level up your first character, you may still be wondering, well, what should I actually do to level up? In short, you have 3 different options. You can just kind of do whatever you feel like and meander to level 80 while loosely paying attention to everything I just described. After all, if the first leveling process is going to take you a long time no matter what you do, the most important thing is that you prioritize activities you enjoy so you don't burn yourself out. Alternatively, you can focus on completing only activities that reward you with account-wide bonuses, such as additional experience or infinite knowledge. Since you'll want to max out these bonuses eventually, prioritizing them while leveling your initial character is a good way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. This was the main strategy that I adopted in my very first run on North America, which took 8.5 hours. Finally, you can try to strike a balance between completing the super easy account-wide objectives, such as raid clears or campaign quests, while ignoring stuff like the Lore Runner achievements that take a lot longer to complete. You can also mix in some of the optimized alt leveling strategies that I'll discuss towards the end of the video. This is what I tried to do in my 5-hour 50-minute Europe run, and in hindsight, I do feel that was the best choice. Upon reaching level 80 on your very first character, you should have at least 50% bonus account-wide experience. Depending on what you chose to do while leveling, you may have even more, and my bonus was closer to 70% when I finished leveling my first character. At this point, you have a big choice to make when it comes to alt leveling. Would you rather level up multiple additional characters immediately with the bonuses that you currently have unlocked, or would you prefer to work on your first character for a while at 80 and try to farm a very large bonus before you level anything else? Although I personally prefer the latter option of trying to maximize your bonus before you work on any additional alts, this isn't necessarily a rhetorical question. A lot of people have expressed to me that they would rather begin leveling up alts immediately and slowly increase their bonus over time, as they find that to be a more fun way of playing the game. If that's your preference, then by all means skip to the end of the video and follow my alt leveling routes, and you'll accumulate a slow trickle of increased experience bonuses over time. However, if you want to be efficient with your time and level as many characters as possible before the end of Remix, you should first focus on maxing out all of your account-wide bonuses. First, I want to address Infinite Knowledge, since it's arguably the least important bonus, but it's also the easiest one to max out this late into the event. Your Infinite Knowledge caps out at 36, but there's a total of 46 sources from different achievements. Additionally, the first 20 points of Infinite Knowledge are worth more than the last 16, so you don't even need to farm all 36 to get most of the value. With all content now accessible, you're able to unlock a huge chunk of Infinite Knowledge just by clearing all of the raids and dungeons at level 80. Although this currency won't have a major impact on your leveling speeds, it's so easy to spend a few hours unlocking all of this at level 80 that I would highly recommend doing so even if you have no interest in the endgame remix content. Now, it's time to discuss the truly important leveling bonus, that being the increased experience modifier. In case you weren't already aware, the cap for this bonus is 400% additional XP, and you'll receive 50% just by leveling up your first character. You can receive an additional once per account 10% XP token by completing the campaign achievements for each zone, resulting in a total of 100% additional experience from one-time sources. There are only two ways to increase this bonus further. Upon completing an infinite research quest, you get a token for 1% additional experience, and every character you level up to 80 will receive another 10% XP token. Taken at face value, this may seem like an absurdly difficult grind, but there is one trick that you can use to max out this bonus extremely quickly. I've already made a separate video on my second channel which discusses this in more detail, but I'll include a brief summary here. By adding free World of Warcraft trial accounts to your main Battle.net account, you're able to effectively multi-box World of Warcraft completely for free and use those free trial accounts to farm infinite research quests for the 1% XP tokens. Although these free trial accounts are technically separate WoW accounts, which allows you to run multiple instances of them at the same time, they're all linked together with your main paid WoW account, meaning they all share the exact same XP bonus. I know all of this sounds extremely complicated, but trust me, it's really easy to set up, and it is completely free. I have already explained this entire setup process in that second channel video, so I've included a link to it in the description below. In total, it takes less than 30 minutes to get all of the accounts up and running, and it allows you to farm the XP bonus up to 5 times faster than normal. If you think it's dumb that this is the best farming method, I completely agree, but remember not to shoot the messenger here. Believe me when I say I have looked into it, and there are no other viable methods to speed up the process of maximizing your XP percent bonus. If you follow the steps that I outlined in that video, you will save literally days of potential leveling time across all of your future alts. None of the leveling strategies that I will outline at the end of this video are as important as having a flat 400% increase to all experience earned. Additionally, as you progress towards the max XP bonus, you'll complete a ton of infinite research quests, which grants you progress towards the account-wide achievement Tenured in the Timeways. As you unlock further ranks of this achievement, you'll be able to complete more research quests per day and hold more of them in your quest log at the same time. Unlocking this achievement is critical for quickly leveling up alts, as you'll often be able to finish multiple research assignments with a single dungeon or raid. To top it off, once you've completed 150 research assignments across your account and unlock the final stage of the achievement, you'll begin to receive an item called Stack of Chrono Queries. You'll receive one of these each time you complete an infinite research assignment, and they stack up to 3. Using this item will re-roll your available infinite research choices, which makes it super easy to hunt for a specific assignment. This is very important for efficient alt leveling for reasons we will soon discuss. With all of that out of the way, we can finally talk about the best alt leveling methods in Legion Remix. Keep in mind that although these strategies will work for anyone regardless of their current experience bonus, it is much more time efficient to reach 400% first before you follow any of this. If you have not yet maxed out your bonus, I strongly urge that you follow the steps in the previous section of my guide. The first thing that needs to be acknowledged when discussing alt leveling is the effectiveness of boosting. Obviously, boosting as a general concept has existed in World of Warcraft since the game first started, but it is disproportionately more powerful in Legion Remix compared to the regular game. Last month, I released a video where I used my main account Demon Hunter to boost a second character in only 36 minutes. While Blizzard decided to nerf the specific spot shown in my video, because of course they fucking did, there are still countless other open world areas that are even more effective for open world leveling. Since posting that video, other players have managed to get 10 to 80 times below 20 minutes with completely different farming spots. As for myself, I'm currently working on a sub 10 minute speedrun, which I hope to pull off within the next month. I actually still need a few people to help me set that up, so if you're on North America and you'd like to participate in that run, shoot me a message over on Discord. My tag is in the description. However, the reason I'm discussing all of this now is to make it clear that these times are completely unrealistic for the vast majority of players. I'm not going to discuss strategies in this video that are only possible with boosting, as I feel it would be pointless to do so, but I do think it's important to acknowledge their existence and use those times as a frame of reference when compared to the solo strategies in this guide. Additionally, many forms of leveling, such as dungeons or raids, involve indirect boosting, where you're receiving help from random high-level players. Although these are traditionally accepted ways to level, and nobody in their right mind would call random dungeons a boosting method, the quality of players that you'll encounter can vary drastically, which muddies the waters when we're trying to nail down exact leveling times. Also, before I get into specific strategies, I want to give a general disclaimer about Heroic World Tier. In case you aren't already aware, turning this on will give you 500% additional mob kill experience. If you focus on strategies that involve group content like dungeons or raids, you're usually relying on getting boosted by random overgeared players anyway, so it's always a good idea to enable Heroic World Tier since you'll just get more experience from the enemies when somebody else one-shots them. However, I'll also discuss some purely solo strategies, and in those tests I found that Heroic World Tier isn't necessarily faster, especially if you're not playing an optimal spec like a tank or a beefy DPS. Ultimately, this is a matter of personal preference, but my general recommendation is to start by enabling it, and then if you feel it's a bit too much to handle, you can turn it off and continue on the standard difficulty. Now, as for those strategies, I feel it's best to first outline the 4 major categories of remix leveling: questing, raids, dungeons, and open world mob farming. Since the event first started, I've conducted multiple tests for each of these categories, as well as a few runs that used a combination of 2 or more. I'll start by discussing each category in a vacuum from best to worst, and then I'll walk through a practical example of a complete 10 to 80 route that I've used to level multiple characters in under 1 hour. Also keep in mind that while all the 10 to 80 times that I reference in this video are done with the maximum bonus of 400% increased XP, the strategies will still work if you have yet to max your bonus. If you've done any raids while leveling in Legion Remix, you probably won't be surprised to learn that it's by far the most efficient source of experience. The first raid that you can access is Emerald Nightmare at level 20, which is fairly early in the leveling process. Beyond that, you can do Trial of Valor at level 25, Nightholds at level 30, and Tomb of Sargeras at level 40. Although the final Legion raid, Antorus, is not available to leveling characters, you'll usually hit level 80 well before it would have been accessible anyways. Now, I've seen a lot of people give a generic recommendation to go through all of the raids in linear order the moment you hit level 20. While this process alone is enough to get you from 20 to 80 at higher XP percent values, some parts of the Legion raids are less efficient than others, and they should be skipped if you're trying to level efficiently. For starters, Trial of Valor is an atrocious raid for leveling, and I would recommend skipping it entirely. The first boss, Odin, doesn't actually reward you with any experience, and you'll have to deal with a ton of trash and roleplay beyond that just to gain 2 bosses worth of XP. The time efficiency of TOV is awful, and that's not even including how long it would take to form a group and have everyone enter the instance just for 2 boss kills. Although this is the only raid that you should skip completely, it's worth noting that the final boss of Nighthold, Gul'dan, is bugged in a similar way to Odin and rewards no experience. Thankfully, since he's the final boss, anyone purely interested in leveling efficiency can just leave the instance after Elisand and move on to Tomb of Sargeras. All of the remaining bosses across all 3 raids work as intended and are great sources of experience for leveling. In addition to killing the bosses themselves, you should always return to the Infinite Bazaar in between each raid in order to pick up the associated research quests. If you look carefully at the experience values, you'll notice that any of the raid-related research quests give significantly more than any generic ones that ask you to complete quests or kill a certain number of enemies. This is also true of the self-improvement research quests, which require you to complete 2 quests, kill 15 generic enemies, and kill 1 dungeon or raid boss. In order to increase your chances at receiving these particular research assignments, you should use the dialogue option on Eternus to set your research preferences to raid assignments, and then select I would prefer harder assignments. This will increase the chances of Heroic World Tier assignments and normal raid assignments appearing, which gives slightly more experience than their generic counterparts. Also, you may notice that some assignments will ask you to complete a specific wing of the raid on LFR. However, this doesn't necessarily require you to run the raid on LFR difficulty. Despite the name, the objective of these assignments is just to kill the final boss of that LFR wing on any difficulty, so these research quests can be completed in the normal version of the raid. Speaking of LFR, I've seen a good amount of debate as to whether or not it's worth running the raids on that difficulty. In short, no, it's not, and I would never really recommend running LFR since a full clear of the normal raids is almost always enough experience to get from levels 20 to 80. I have seen a few people specifically advocate for running the Rift of Allen LFR wing over and over. as you can pretty much AFK the entire clear, and you'll still receive experience every single time. While this is a clever little trick, all I will say is that there are significantly faster and easier full AFK leveling methods present in Legion Remix. I will not be showcasing them in this video, because then they would get promptly nerfed, and they're not actually faster than the active leveling methods that I've discussed here. However, I have sprinkled some clues on how to find these methods in a few of my second channel videos in order to reward attentive viewers. The final important detail to note for raid leveling is how the experience is actually rewarded. When the boss dies, 2 bonus experience tokens are immediately deposited into your bags and then automatically consumed to reward your character with experience. Unfortunately, the Blizzard spaghetti code behind this process will often break if your character is dead or if the servers are extremely laggy. Usually, if there's extreme lag, it's not that big of a deal, as the worst thing I've seen happen is the token will still enter your bags but just fail to get automatically consumed. In this case, as long as you right-click on the tokens in your bags, you're still rewarded with the standard amount of experience. However, if you're dead when the raid boss is killed, you will more often than not receive 0 experience for that kill, which is obviously a massive loss of time. This tends to not be an issue in an early raid like Emerald Nightmare, since you'll usually have someone who can one-shot the boss. On the other hand, the later bosses of Nighthold and Tomb are much more difficult to instantly kill, and they'll often have enough time to fire off mechanics which will instantly kill any undergeared players in the raid, denying them of experience from that boss. This means that avoiding accidental death is actually a very important thing to keep in mind if you plan to level alts through normal raids. It should go without saying that if you have access to a tank spec, you should switch to it on your alt, as that usually helps you stay alive through heavy incoming damage. However, a neat little trick that I like to use regardless of my class is to talent into the Holy Tree on your artifact. Provided you have enough infinite power to unlock them, the later traits will give your character 2 cheat death abilities, and this should be enough to survive almost all normal raid bosses except for maybe kill Jaden. As a final note, the bonus experience rewarded from boss kills is automatically awarded to all players in the raid instance regardless of whether or not they participated in the kill. This means that you can park your alt at the entrance of a raid, where they're completely safe from any boss attacks, and they'll receive full credit for any bosses killed in that raid. I've conducted numerous tests for raid leveling, and while all of them have been exceptionally fast, the time does vary quite a bit depending on a few factors. In my slowest test, I did some generic quests to level from 10 to 20, and then I formed my own groups from scratch to clear Emerald Nightmare, Nighthold, and then Tomb of Sargeras. Although we did have some geared level 80s, their verse bonuses weren't incredibly high, so the kill times were still rather slow. To top it off, I got fairly unlucky with infinite research quests despite aggressively using all of my reroll attempts and setting my preference to raid. Even with all of these complications, the run still took only 1 hour and 33 minutes. A month earlier, I did a similar test, but my groups formed very quickly, had extremely geared level 80s, and I got amazing luck with research quests. Despite Tomb of Sargeras not being available at the time I did that run, it only took 1 hour and 22 minutes, so with similar RNG, it would likely be a bit faster today. Now, the problem with these times is that although I feel they reflect the experience of an average player, a good chunk of the run is still spent waiting around trying to form a raid group. This is a large variable on its own, but as I've already mentioned, the quality of the players that you'll find can differ tremendously. In order to get an accurate baseline of how fast it would be to clear these raids without any downtime, I did 2 different tests where I boosted a character through a similar raid route using my high-verse DH from my main account. During the first run, I had some bad luck with research quests, but my final 10 to 80 time was still 49 minutes. However, my other test featured better luck with research assignments and was even faster, clocking in at 43 minutes. While I would technically consider this run to be boosting, since I used my main account to carry my leveling character, I killed all of the bosses completely solo, and the time it took me to clear each raid was roughly comparable to a regular group that you would find in the LFG tool. The point I'm trying to demonstrate is that a good chunk of practical raid leveling is actually spent fully AFK waiting on players to sign up. This actually makes it rather chill compared to other methods, since you have natural breaks to get up and grab food, coffee, or your beverage of choice. So now that I made it pretty clear that running normal raids is by far the fastest way to level from 20 to 80, many of you probably have the same question. What's the fastest way to get the initial 10 levels before you reach level 20? The first option I'll discuss is running dungeons, which seems like a fairly obvious choice to pair with running raids. In order to accurately evaluate the efficiency of dungeons, I've done a wide variety of test runs where they were the only method I used to level from 10 to 80. The first type of test that I did was to level completely solo with only random dungeon queues as a tank or healer. I don't even have a specific time to give you for this leveling method, because it was so ungodly slow that I abandoned my first test run midway through. Keep in mind, this was also while getting near instant queues as a tank or healer, so running random dungeons as a DPS is a complete non-starter. The problem with spamming dungeons is that the community has realized by now it's not the fastest way to level, and so you often run into groups of players that are completely clueless, which leads to extremely messy runs and only compounds this issue further. The funny thing about this is that dungeons aren't actually that bad, provided you have at least one person to help carry it, which brings me to my other tests. I conducted two different types of tests where I boosted a character through random dungeons. The first was done using my level 80 Demon Hunter, and for the second one I used a level 20 Brewmaster Monk Twink that I've created on a Starter Edition account. As previously mentioned, these starter accounts are a great way to farm additional XP% for your account-wide bonus, but they also serve as a fairly simple method that you can use to boost yourself through dungeons. If you want more information about how to properly build a level 20 Brewmaster Monk Twink, I put together a separate video discussing that on my second channel, and I'll include a link to it in the description below. As for the random dungeon tests, I performed them using 3 accounts at once. My leveling character, queued as a DPS, my level 80 DH, queued as a tank, and my level 20 monk, queued as a healer. This gave me near instant dungeon queues throughout all tests, which eliminated that as a potential variable. In the test where I used my level 80 DH to clear all of the dungeons, it took me 1 hour and 13 minutes to level from 10 to 80. It's worth noting that this test was a month ago when I only had about 200% verse, so it would be slightly faster if I redid the test now, though I don't expect it would make enough of a difference to bother. I also did a test using only my level 20 monk to clear the dungeons, and this was a bit slower at 1 hour and 26 minutes. While these are respectable times for 10 to 80, it should go without saying that spamming dungeons has way more random conditions compared to running raids, and these tests were intended to simulate a near-perfect setup. Also, in addition to actually clearing the dungeons, I included the completion of dungeon-related infinite research quests in between queue times. This is the only reason why dungeons are even remotely comparable to raids for speed leveling, as you can almost always have a good set of active research assignments if you properly utilize your rerolls. Since the average player can also expect to wait a minute or two in between runs, you don't end up losing any time when you turn in and pick up a new set of research quests. Another factor to consider for running dungeons is that your first clear of the day gives you a substantial amount of bonus XP, according to a blue post made by Blizzard. Unfortunately, Blizzard's definition of substantial is a bit strange, as what they actually did is made it so the chunk of XP you get for completing a random dungeon is 2.5 times higher on the first clear of the day. Relatively speaking, this is about the same amount of extra experience that you would gain from killing a few packs of trash in a dungeon. Even though this bonus is fairly trivial, I conducted yet another test run at the request of someone in my Discord server, where I leveled a character purely through daily random heroic dungeons in order to always receive the extra bonus. To my surprise, this run clocked in at 57 minutes, which was a lot faster than my initial test without the bonus. However, I had to record this run over the course of 6 different days, and it was easily the least fun leveling run I've completed thus far in Legion Remix. In summary, although dungeons are nowhere near as fast as they were in MoP Remix and are now clearly an inferior option compared to raids, they can be a solid way to level provided you have a player boosting you through them. The main reason why I discuss dungeons as the second option is because, technically speaking, running a single normal dungeon with associated infinite research quests is the fastest way to level from 10 to 20 before you enter Emerald Nightmare and begin clearing raids. Since this isn't necessarily a guaranteed fast option due to all of the random variables, I would personally recommend queuing for a dungeon and then proceeding to do other activities while you wait. If the queue pops quickly, the run is clean, and you're able to easily reach level 20, then awesome, you can continue on to raids. If the worst case scenario occurs and you can tell the dungeon group is a disaster early on, just leave and continue leveling to 20 on your own. The next strategy I'll discuss is a fairly standard one: questing. It should come as no surprise that even the most optimized questing paths in Remix are slower when compared to other options, but thanks to the new features added in Legion Remix, the difference is actually a lot smaller than I had initially expected. Back in MoP Remix, I tried doing some quest-only runs to see how they compared to the best strat at the time, which was dungeon boosting. I was getting times in the 4 to 5 hour range for questing, which was considerably slower than the 1 hour times you could expect from dungeons. However, I've done a few quest-only paths in Legion Remix, and most of my times land around 2 hours for 10 to 80. A lot of these runs are pretty generic, but I will highlight one particular test that I did a few weeks ago. I performed a run as a Havoc Demon Hunter with Heroic World Tier enabled immediately, and I leveled exclusively through Order Hall quests and the Val'sharah campaign. The final time was 1 hour and 57 minutes, and although this was the only pure questing run that I managed to get below 2 hours, I actually feel it could be improved if I were to disable Heroic World Tier in certain areas. The Val'sharah questline, especially early on, is incredibly efficient, but I spent a lot of time slowly killing mobs and trying not to die, which I felt lost more time than it ended up saving. Although I wouldn't necessarily recommend pure quest leveling for alts, since there are much better options available, this should go to show that it isn't actually that bad if you just really feel like leveling a character through traditional questing. I will point out, though, that the quests in Val'sharah are far superior to every other zone, and one of the main reasons why this strategy works at all is because you'll reach level 80 before you even finish the zone if you have the max XP bonus of 400%. Although High Mountain and Azuna are both decent options if you're still missing out on experience, I would never recommend leveling in Stormheim. I love the questline in that zone and its overall ambiance, but it is an abysmal option for speed leveling. Personally, I feel that it's a good idea to prioritize completing these zone campaigns while leveling your first character, as that's an easy way to earn your 10% XP tokens from the associated achievements. On repeat runs, though, this method tends to lag behind. With all of that being said, I do feel that the initial Order Hall campaign, alongside some early quests in Val'sharah, is a fantastic option for leveling from 10 to 20. This is a strategy that I employed for my fastest pure solo speedrun where I refused to use any form of grouping, including random dungeons or pug raids. Although a normal dungeon run with perfect RNG is technically the fastest way a solo player can reach level 20, on average you'll be better off doing the early quests in Val'sharah. Personally, I would also advise you to disable Heroic World Tier during this process, as it usually slows you down during the very early levels before you've unlocked your core abilities. The leveling method that I've saved for last is not necessarily the slowest, but in my opinion, it's the most controversial, and that is open world mob farming. Now, as I already stated before, this is by far the fastest way to level if you're getting boosted. The Heroic World Tier XP modifier is enormous, and while it can slow you down for solo questing, that's not a concern if a high-level player is instantly killing enemies for you. But, as I said before, we're not talking about boosting strategies in this video, so what if you tried to farm open world mobs as a solo player? Wouldn't that just be incredibly slow? Well, kinda, but in some very specific circumstances, it can be an effective way to level. The main reason why Heroic World Tier tends to be slow for questing routes is because the mobs you're fighting aren't meant to be efficient for farming strategies. They're just a speed bump in the path of other quest objectives. However, if you find the right spot where mobs are easy enough to kill relative to your character's strength, you can actually get a decent amount of XP all by yourself. This was the main method that I used in my fastest pure solo speedrun, which had a final time of 1 hour and 12 minutes. Up until level 30, I did the aforementioned standard questing path of unlocking my Order Hall and completing the start of Val'sharah. After level 30, I flew over to Suramar and grabbed a buff called Ley Infusion, which allowed me to efficiently farm mobs in Suramar City. If you want more specific details on how this process works, you can go watch that part of the speedrun, and as usual, there's a link to it in the description below. Ultimately, I don't actually recommend doing this strategy yourself, as it's surprisingly difficult to pull off. Even with the special buff, mobs on Heroic World Tier will kill you very quickly, and I was playing a Guardian Druid, which is by far the tankiest spec at lower levels. I had to do some very aggressive pulls in order to make this strategy work, and I even got myself killed multiple times. For the average player, this is not only an impractical way to level, but it's just still slower than running raids. However, I felt this run was important to at least set a benchmark for how fast mob farming can be when done solo. Also, in case it wasn't obvious, this is only an effective leveling method because of the buff from Heroic World Tier, and if you're going to level in normal World Tier, questing is just a far superior option. Now that we've covered all of the information that you need to know in order to quickly level in Legion Remix, I want to end the video with a brief summary. On your first character, you shouldn't expect to level quickly, and you should instead familiarize yourself with remix mechanics and try to work towards account-wide bonuses. Before you begin leveling tons of alts, I'd recommend doing a bit of farming in the endgame to max out your increased XP bonus and unlock the ability to reroll infinite research quests. When leveling alts, you'll first need to get from level 10 to 20 with whatever method you prefer. If you like running dungeons, then set that as your research preference by speaking to Eternus before doing a single normal dungeon run to reach level 20. Otherwise, you can unlock your Order Hall and complete quests in Val'sharah to reach level 20 the old-fashioned way. At this point, you should return to Eternus, set your research preferences to raid and harder assignments, and try to grab as many Emerald Nightmare research quests as possible before running that raid on normal difficulty. Afterwards, grab a new set of research assignments and run Nighthold, leaving before Gul'dan since he gives no experience. If you haven't reached level 80 by this point, you can either continue on to Tomb of Sargeras, complete a few more quests in Val'sharah, or finish up some easy infinite research assignments like collecting time motes. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to answer you as soon as I can. If you found this video helpful, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe and toss it a like, as this is one of the most in-depth leveling guides I've ever made.